Slang in America by Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman was born on Long Island in New York. He worked as a teacher, a printer, and a journalist before making his name as a poet. Known widely for his free verse as well as his democratic spirit, Whitman is one of the most influential poets in the English language. His major work is Leaves of Grass. Among the famous poems from that collection are Facing West from California's Shores, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, and When Lilacs Last in the Doorway Bloomed, about Abraham Lincoln. Whitman's essay Slang in America was first published in 1885 in the North American Review and later collected in November Boughs, a volume of Whitman's prose and poetry. Viewed freely, the English language is the accretion and growth of every dialect, race, and range of time, and is both the free and compacted composition of all. From this point of view, it stands for language in the largest sense, and is really the greatest of studies. It involves so much, is indeed a sort of universal absorber, combiner, and conqueror. The scope of its etymologies is the scope not only of man and civilization, but the history of nature in all departments, and of the organic universe brought up to date, for all are comprehended in words and their backgrounds. This is when words become vitalized and stand for things, as they unerringly and soon come to do, in the mind that enters on their study with fitting spirit, grasp, and appreciation. Slang, profoundly considered, is the lawless germinal element, below all words and sentences and behind all poetry, and proves a certain perennial rankness and Protestantism in speech. As the United States inherit by far their most precious possession, the language they talk and write from the Old World, under and out of its feudal institutes, I will allow myself to borrow a simile, even of those forms farthest removed from American democracy. Considering language then as some mighty potentate, into the majestic audience hall of the monarch ever enters a personage like one of Shakespeare's clowns, and takes position there, and plays a part even in the stateliest ceremonies. Such as slang, or indirection, an attempt of common humanity to escape from bald literalism and express itself illimitably, which in highest walks produced poets and poems, and doubtless in prehistoric times gave the start to and perfected the whole immense tangle of the old mythologies. For curious as it may appear, it is strictly the same impulse source, the same thing. Slang, too, is the wholesome fermentation or eructation of the processes eternally active in language, by which froth and specks are thrown up, mostly to pass away, though occasionally to settle and permanently crystallize. To make it plainer, it is certainly that many of the oldest and solidest words we use were originally generated from the daring and license of slang. In the process of word formation, myriads die, but here and there the attempt to track superior meanings becomes valuable and indispensable and lives forever. Thus, the term right means literally only straight. Wrong primarily meant twisted, distorted. Integrity meant oneness. Spirit meant breath or flame. A supercilious person was one who raised his eyebrows. To insult was to leap against. If you influenced a man, you but flowed into him. The Hebrew word, which is translated prophecy, meant to bubble up and pour forth as a fountain. The enthusiast bubbles up with the Spirit of God within him, and it pours forth from him like a fountain. The word prophecy is misunderstood. Many suppose that it is limited to mere prediction, that is, but the lesser portion of prophecy. The greater work is to reveal God. Every true religious enthusiast is a prophet. Language, be it remembered, is not an abstract construction of the learned or of dictionary makers, but is something arising out of the work, needs, ties, joys, affections, tastes of long generations of humanity, and has its bases broad and low, close to the ground. Its final decisions are made by the masses, people nearest to the concrete, having most to do with actual land and sea. It impermeates all, the past as well as the present, and is the grandest triumph of the human intellect. Those mighty works of art, says Addington Symonds, which we all call languages, is the construction of which whole peoples unconsciously cooperated, the forms of which were determined not by individual genius, but by the instincts of successive generations acting to one end, inherent in the nature of the race. Those poems of pure thought and fancy, cadenced not in words, but in living imagery, fountainheads of inspiration, mirrors of the mind of nascent nations, which we call mythologies. These, surely, are more marvelous in their infantine spontaneity than any more mature production of the races which evolved them. Yet we are utterly ignorant of their embryology. The true science of origins is yet in its cradle. Daring as it is to say so in the growth of language, it is certain that the retrospective slang from the start would be the recalling from their nebulous conditions of all that is poetical in the stores of human utterance. Moreover, the honest delving, as of late years, by the German and British workers in comparative philology has pierced and dispersed many of the falsest bubbles of centuries, and will disperse many more. It was long recorded that in Scandinavian mythology, the heroes in the Norse paradise drank out of the skulls of their slain enemies. Later investigation proves the word taken for skulls to mean horns of beasts slain in the hunt. And what reader had not been exercised by the traces of that feudal custom by which seigneurs warmed their feet in the bowels of serfs, the abdomens being opened for the purpose? It now is made to appear that the serf was only required to submit his unharmed abdomen as a foot cushion, while his lord supped, and was required to chafe the legs of the seigneur with his hands. It is curiously in embryons in childhood and among the illiterate we always find the groundwork and start of this great science, and its noblest products. What a relief most people have in speaking of a man not by his true and formal name with a mister to it, but by some odd or homely appellative. The propensity to approach a meaning not directly and squarely, but by circuitous styles of expression, seems indeed a born quality of the common people everywhere, evidenced by nicknames and the inveterate determination of the masses to bestow subtitles, sometimes ridiculous, sometimes very apt. Always among the soldiers during the Secession War was one heard of Little Mac or of Uncle Billy. The old man was, of course, very common. Among the rank and file, both armies, it was very general to speak of the different states that came from by their slang names. Those from Maine were called Foxes, New Hampshire Granite Boys, Massachusetts Bay Staters, Vermont Green Mountain Boys, Rhode Island Gunflints, Connecticut Wooden Nutmegs, New York Knickerbockers, New Jersey Clam Catchers, Pennsylvania Loggerheads, Delaware Muskrats, Maryland Claw Thumpers, Virginia Beagles, North Carolina Tarboilers, South Carolina Weasels, Georgia Buzzards, Louisiana Creoles, Alabama Lizards, Kentucky Corncrackers, Ohio Buckeyes, Michigan Wolverines, Indiana Hoosiers, Illinois Suckers, Missouri Pukes, Mississippi Tadpoles, Florida Fly Up the Creeks, Wisconsin Badgers, Iowa Hawkeyes, Oregon Hardcases. Indeed, I am not sure, but slang names have more than once made presidents. Old Hickory is one case in point. Tippecanoe and Tyler, too, another. I find the same rule in the people's conversations everywhere. I heard this among the men of the city horse cars, where the conductor is often called a snatcher. Example, because his characteristic duty is to constantly pull or snatch the bell strap, or stop or go on. Two young fellows are having a friendly talk, amid which says one conductor, "What did you do before you were a snatcher?" Answer of second conductor, "Nailed." Translation of answer, "I worked as carpenter." "What is a boom?" says one editor to another. "Esteemed contemporary," says the other. "A boom is a bulge." Barefoot whiskey is the Tennessee name for the undiluted stimulant. In the slang of the New York Common Restaurant, waiters a plate of ham and beans is known as stars and stripes. Codfish balls are sleeve buttons, and hash as mystery. The western states of the Union are, however, as may be supposed, the special areas of slang, not only in conversation, but in names of localites, towns, rivers, etc. A late Oregon traveler says, "On your way to Olympia by rail, you cross a river called the Shookumchuck. Your train stops at places called Newookum, Tumwater, and Toutle, and if you seek further, you will hear of whole counties is labeled Wahicum, or Snohomish, or Kitsar, or Klickitat, and Cowlitz, Hookium, and Nenelopes great and offend you. They complain in Olympia that Washington Territory gets but little immigration. But what wonder? What man, having the whole American continent to choose from, would willingly date his letters from the county of Snohomish, or bring up his children in the city of Nenolilops? The village of Turnwaters, as I am ready to bear witness, very pretty indeed, but surely an emigrant would think twice before he established himself either there or at Toutle. Seattle is sufficiently barbarous. Steilacoom is no better, and I suspect that the Northern Pacific Railroad terminus has been fixed at Tacoma because it's one of the few places on Puget Sound whose names does not inspire horror. Then a Nevada paper chronicles the departure of a mining party from Reno. The toughest set of roosters that ever shook the dust off any town left Reno yesterday for the new mining district of Cornucopia. They came here from Virginia. Among the crowd were 4 New York cockfighters, 2 Chicago murderers, 3 Baltimore bruisers, 1 Philadelphia prizefighter, 4 San Francisco hoodlums, 3 Virginia beats, 2 Union Pacific roughs, and 2 Czech guerrillas. Among the Far West's new papers have been or are the Fair Play Flume, the Solid Muldoon of Our Ray, the Tombstone Epitaph of Nevada, the Jimple Cute of Texas, and the Bazoo of Missouri. Shirt Tail Bend, Whiskey Flat, Puppy Town, Wild Yankee Ranch, Squaw Flat, Rawhide Ranch, Loafer's Ravine, Squitch Gulch, Toenail Lake are a few of the names of places in Butte County, California. Perhaps indeed no place or term gives more luxuriant illustrations of the fermentation processes I've mentioned and their froth and specks than those Mississippi and Pacific coast regions of the present day. Hasty and grotesque are some of the names. Others are of an appropriateness and originality unsurpassable. This applies to the Indian words, which are often perfect. Oklahoma is proposed in Congress for the name of one of our new territories. Hog-eyed, Lick Skillet, Rake Pocket, and Steely's are the names of some Texan towns. Miss Bremer found among the Aborigines the following names: Men's Horn Point, Round Wind, Stand and Lookout, The Cloud That Goes Aside, Iron Toe, Seek the Sun, Iron Flash, Red Bottle, White Spindle, Black Dog, Two Feathers of Honor, Gray Grass, Bushy Tail, Thunderface, Go on the Burning Sod, Spirits of the Dead, Women's, Keep the Fire, Spiritual Women, Second Daughter of the House, Bluebird. Certainly, philologists have not given enough attention to this element and its results, which I repeat can probably be found working everywhere today, amid modern conditions, with as much life and activity as in far back Greece or India under prehistoric ones. Then the wit, the rich flashes of humor and genius and poetry, darting out often from a gang of laborers, railroad men, miners, drivers, or boatmen. How often have I hovered at the edge of a crowd of them to hear their repartees and impromptus? You get more real fun from a half hour with them than from the books of all the American humorists. The science of language has large and close analogies in geological science, with its ceaseless evolution, its fossils, and its numberless submerged layers and hidden strata, the infinite go-before of the present. Or perhaps language is more like some vast living body, or perennial body of bodies, and slang not only brings the first feeders of it, but is afterwards the start of fancy, imagination, and humor, breathing into its nostrils the breath of life.